So tonight we're going to be discussing graduate student strategies for finding international internships. We have our 5 panelists here. Brian, our 5th, is on the way. So we have 2 different examples. 3 of the panelists were part of organized programs and they went through a formal application process, and 2 were self-found internships. I guess the idea to stress at this point in time is to, even though some of the panelists may not be in your field of choice, the idea, I guess, is to take away from all this the process itself, because it is very similar for everyone, and to try to apply that into your experience as you all are looking for internships this coming year. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Ryan Sparks, who is from the College of Engineering. He's majoring in industrial engineering. He participated in the Cultural Vistas Congress-Bundestag program.
Sit or stand? Okay, so my name is Ryan Sparks. I'm a first-year master's student right now in the College of Engineering. I did my undergrad here, graduated back in 2009, and at that time it was a great time to look for jobs because nobody was hiring. So I decided to seek out a new opportunity, and that's when I found the Congress-Bundestag Youth Exchange for Young Professionals. It's a program sponsored by the U.S. Department of State to go to Germany, and it's administered by Cultural Vistas. I'm going to go through a little bit of my background, the program itself, the different opportunities that Cultural Vistas has, some strategies for finding the right program for you, how to apply, how to interview, and the last thing we'll be touching on internships a little bit, what it's like working in a foreign country. So like I said, I did my undergraduate here, and took some time off to work, and then I ended up working full-time after the program before coming back and starting my master's studies here. So it was a little bit different, but it was post-undergrad that I was doing my internship abroad. The CBOX program was actually excellent, unlike the people that had to find the jobs themselves. This one was basically a lot of work up front to get accepted to the program, but then after that it was hands-off and everything was done for you. It was fully paid flight, housing, everything was covered, monthly stipends for food, so the only expenses were basically personal travel and fun and enjoyment. The program itself consisted of 2 months of language learning. There were people in the group that had absolutely no German experience to people that had lived there before and were perfectly fluent. So the program itself catered to everyone. After that, there was basically a semester on the university to improve the language skills and to get to understanding, I guess, more of the technical terms. So people would take classes in their field to improve their ability to speak and communicate in relation to what they were planning on working with. The last 6 months of the program were then an internship in the field of your choice. The program itself would actually help students, students find an internship if they wanted one, but you're also able to go out and look on your own, which I ended up doing because I had a specific company that I wanted to work for. The Cultural Vistas, the company that actually administers this program, they receive the funding all through the U.S. Department of State. They have other programs though, the Cultural Vistas Fellowship, which is Argentina, Germany, and Singapore, the Alpha Fellowship, which is in Russia, and the Robert Bosch Fellowship in Germany. These are all catered towards people in graduate school or already people that have graduated with a master's and may even have some professional experience. They also do offer just single internships. The first 3 programs I mentioned are more extended programs. There's a little bit more, not just the internship, but they'll have different assemblies and seminars and give you a little bit more of a cultural reach. And then they do have strictly just internships where they'll find you a company in a foreign country, help you with the visa process, and get you set up. The strategies for finding the right program. I don't know if all of you are dead set on what you want to do, where you want to do it. Is there a specific company? I think it's all personal preference, but that's really just the first step, is picking where you want to go. Sometimes you don't even have to answer all the questions before you leave. What you honestly have to do is just find a program that fits you, a country that you want to go to. But the biggest piece of advice is to start early. Find out what all the options are. Find out what different opportunities there are, how it fits into your overall schedule with schooling, when you want to be finished, how long you want to be abroad. As far as applying goes, apply to anything and everything. My program, I had to do a lot of the work up front, writing different application letters, but that made it easy because then I have to worry about applying for visas and some of the other things that become more difficult later before you go abroad. But either way, it's there's a lot of paperwork to be involved no matter how you go, whether it's a year, whether it's 6 weeks, it's going to be a headache. I guess just do it is the only advice I can give there. Finally, with interviewing, a lot of programs will be looking for different things. My program was specifically related to being a cultural ambassador. So for a while I was living with a German host family, and it was about cultural integration, learning more so the customs, and understanding how the German culture, both in the home life and at the university and in the workplace, differs from that in the US. So a lot of the interview was very focused on that. Hopefully this doesn't go back to them, but I lied quite a bit in the interview to say that I was interested in different things or was more concerned about that when the internship was the main part for me. And so I'm not advising being dishonest, but sometimes you kind of have to tweak your story or what your motivations are to fit the program. As far as the internship goes, I had a little bit of experience. I had worked for a German company here in the US, so I was somewhat aware of what some of the differences would be. It started off working here as kind of saying, okay, I don't understand why this person's so weird and why they're doing this, and then I got there and everyone was doing it and I was the weird one who wasn't. But the biggest thing is to put yourself out there, not just in terms of the work you're doing, but actually to get involved with the people you're working with. Somebody invites you out to coffee or out to dinner, be as involved as you can. I think you learn a lot more about the people than the work itself. A lot of the stuff is, well, at least for me, was repetitive to what I had done here. So the work itself wasn't new, it was actually the culture and the environment that I was in. So my only advice there is to take as much, or participate as actively as you can. Depending where you go, most people will try to practice their English with you. So the most important there is if you're trying to learn the foreign language, make sure it's very clear on the first day that you are there to learn their language and you're not there to be an English tutor for the rest of them. I've just touched on a few topics briefly here. I'll let the other people all speak, and then there'll be a question and answer session at the end. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
We're actually going to do the Q&A section after every panelist speaks, so you can stay sitting though. But does anyone have any questions for Ryan?
Yeah, what did you major in? So you're doing a Bachelor's in Engineering now, is your background engineering?
Yeah, I did my bachelor's in Industrial and Operations Engineering.
Any other questions? And also, towards the end, we will have a small section. If you think of anything to ask them afterwards, you can do that. So our next panelist is Heather Olden. She's from the School of Public Health. She was an MHIRT participant in Chile. MHIRT is the Minority Health and Health Disparities International Research Training Program.
Hi everyone, you guys having a good day? Yeah? Okay, so I'm very laid back and informal, so at any point, actually if anyone has any questions, just ask me as I go, okay? So I'm from Durham, North Carolina. I did my bachelor's in biological sciences, and I am a second-year public health student in epidemiology, and my concentration is international health. So I did the MHIRT program in Santiago, Chile. You go to Chile for 3 months. And I had a fantastic time, and I definitely suggest everyone apply to the program. It's awesome. So first I'm just going to talk a little bit about the application process, a little bit about my experience in Chile, some tips that I have in terms of working abroad and living abroad, and then also just some wisdom and tips, okay? So, application process. On your sheet it says that MHIRT is due November 15th. I'm here to tell you that if you want to do the MHIRT program, you should probably start doing your research tomorrow. Right around this time last year, I heard about the MHIRT program and I immediately went online and I was like, all right, what's going on with this MHIRT program? It's fully funded. They do absolutely everything for you. It's very stress-free, I promise. And so I was like, what is this about? So I went and looked online and I found all of the Michigan the people who had the grants, right? So those who had MHIRT grants, I went and found all of them, and I looked at their projects, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to do this program, I want to be interested in what I'm doing, right? So I go and I find Dr. Betsy Lozoff. She does all of the China and Chile programs. And just so you know, there are a lot of countries associated with this MHIRT program here. You have Chile, China, Mongolia, Jamaica, Ghana, and Kenya. And so on October 1st, I emailed Dr. Lozoff and I'm like, hi, I want to work with you and would really appreciate meeting with you and kind of talk about what type of students you want to work with. So I went and met with her at the beginning of October. no one in the School of Public Health, well, I don't know if I can say it, no one, but I don't think anyone knew what the MHIRT program was at that point. So I kind of felt like I was ahead of the game, right? So I meet with Dr. Lozoff, she's like, yeah, so this is what I want you to work on, but this is what makes me unique. I got an internship with the formal program, MHIRT, but I actually created my own project. I sat at home with a blank sheet of paper and started from a blank sheet of paper to an actual full-blown project. So I'm a little bit different. By November 1st, when everyone was like scrambling to finish their applications, my application was in, and I already knew if I got selected. I was already meeting with people on how to formulate my project, right? So I'm already a little bit ahead of the game. So the MHIRT application process, you have a group interview, you have an individual interview, and I'm not sure the order, they may change that. But the group interview was just about group cohesiveness. So can you work with other people? And that was awesome for me. I love group interviews because you can just talk about yourself and how you would do something, right? So I'm like, yes. Then I had my individual interview, but I'd already talked to Dr. Lozoff. So at this point, it was just checking in to see what I had done in terms of progress with my project. At the end of the semester, MHIRT will let you know whether you've been accepted or not. If you're accepted, your second semester is devoted to preparing for this internship. And it seems, you go to seminars, you do group building exercises, and it may seem really tedious and boring, but it's actually super helpful. You're learning how to adjust to a new environment. You're learning how to interact with the people that you're going to be in that country with. So at the time, I didn't appreciate it, but once I was living in Chile, I was like, wow, that stuff was really awesome. So my internship was really fun. I actually did my project on asthma and its relationship to exercise and obesity. And I guess my advice would be project-wise, right? So actual content-wise is if there's something that you want to study, right? If there's something you're interested in, like for me it was asthma, ask that person, if you're with a formal program, ask them if there's some way you can incorporate it. I was working with people, the data population, or the population that I had were children who had been followed for 20 years, and everything but their shoe size was on record, right? So you just have everything you can think of about these children for 20 years, like 2,000 kids. So I looked at that data and I was like, I don't want to do something on iron deficiency, which is Dr. Lozoff's specialty. I was like, I want to do something with asthma. So I thought way outside of the box and created my project. I had a couple problems with IRB. You guys know what IRB is, right? Institutional Review Board. They're the ones who approve absolutely all the research that happens at Michigan. And if you guys have questions about that, I definitely suggest coming to talk to me afterwards. But I had a lot of obstacles during my internship. I had to go to people's houses to interview them. That was interesting. I didn't have transportation half the time, so my survival instincts have gotten a lot better. But content-wise, definitely, if you have something you want to do, go for it. Ask. What's the worst that could happen? They can tell you no, right? Okay, so while I was there, the other thing I wanted to tell you guys about, have fun. Like, you're there to do your internship, and that's all well and good, and be fantastic at your internship, but you're also in a different country. So have some fun. Go out and explore. Go to museums. Talk to people. Make friends. It makes your experience that much better. So a couple tips that I have. Start early. I definitely agree. Like I said, when my peers were turning in their applications November 12th, November 13th, I was laying back looking at other options because I didn't want to keep all my eggs in one basket. So definitely start early. Go do your research. If you like something, go online, Google it. Figure out who's doing that around the country, around the world. Email them. A lot of people not a lot of people, but professors and professionals love when you reach out to them and you tell them, hey, I love the work that you're doing. Can I work with you? There again, what's the worst they can tell you? No? Okay, well, find someone else who's doing it and ask them if you can work with them. And then also get excited. So when you're applying for these internships, what I started doing is I'm a person where I speak positivity so that positivity can actually come, positivity can actually happen. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get this internship. There was no doubt in my mind. I started getting excited. I went online. I started looking at things to do in Chile, traveling, all types of stuff. It makes it that much better. And it gives you something to look forward to. And also, something that people did not tell me is before you leave, and I think you also touched on this, you're gonna have a lot of unanswered questions, and that's okay. It's absolutely okay to have unanswered questions. That's actually part of the fun of going international. And not everything is going to work out. So I'm here to tell you, when you leave and you're like, yes, I have everything planned step by step, it's not all going to work out. And it's okay if it doesn't all work out. That's it. Yes.
On the application, it says you need like 2 letters of rec from professional reference and 1 from personal. So who did you use for your personal reference?
So I was at Michigan literally for 2 months, or a month at the point when I got my application. So I'm like, oh man, like, what faculty am I that cool with? I can be like, hey, can you like write me a letter of recommendation? So I spoke to the MHIRT people and I said, listen, I just got here, what am I supposed to do? They actually used my recommendation letters for my admission into SPH. So I didn't even have to reach out to anyone to get a letter. And I'm pretty sure they did that for a lot of people who, like me, who just got here. So, but yeah, I would definitely, if you have any questions about the application process, Tamulin, she's great. She'll definitely help you out with that. Yeah.
So who did you find a letter from the career office or from your advisor?
Yeah, my registrar just literally took my letters from my admissions folder and put it and sent it over to MHIRT for me. Yeah. Yes.
What did you do about language?
Okay. So I actually I've been speaking Spanish since 5th grade, but it wasn't, it was kind of like that nod and smile type thing. Like, I think I understand what you're saying. But the thing, I was in a host family's house. I had a host mom, it wasn't even a family, it was just her. And Meche, when I got there, she asked me how I wanted to, did I want all Spanish, a little bit of Spanish, some English, how did I want, and I actually went in and I said I want all Spanish. I told my mentor, do not speak to me in English, because when you're in those environments, it's great. Everyone's speaking Spanish around you, and there will be a point. There was one day I woke up and I was thinking in Spanish, everything on the TV was making sense. So if you're not where I was in terms of Spanish before you leave, start taking classes, go online. There are free classes in Ann Arbor, Spanish, for instance, French, possibly, and other languages. Go and do some of those classes because it can only help you in the long run. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yes.
How did you find the professors who are working with MHIRT? Did you just like Google professors associated with MHIRT?
I literally Googled MHIRT, and then I think it takes you to how many schools have the MHIRT grant. And you select your school, and it's all on there, and it tells you everyone. And the countries I mentioned may actually change. They just got.
Like yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, they were the same ones. Perfect. Yeah. So I just Googled it, and then if their email address isn't on the website, I went and did my detective work on Michigan's website and found them. Yeah. Anyone else?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So is MHIRT only open to students at the School of Public Health?
As far as I know, MHIRT is open to all students, undergrad and graduate. We had 6 girls that went, 3 were undergrad, and the 3 grad students just happened to be from School of Public Health, but I remember in my interview there were people from a variety of other grad schools too. Grad programs. Yes?
Do you have any idea, just out of curiosity, how selective?
I have a fair idea. So there were 2 weeks of group interviews, and these group interviews had maybe 8 or 9 people in each group. And these interviews were every 30 minutes for 3 hours a day, okay? So imagine, that's a lot of people. These are undergrad and grad, whatever. The group that actually was selected to go to the various countries, I think it was like 30 of us. So what happens when you apply, it's kind of like the mentors I was telling you about who have the grants, they kind of go at like, I want this person, no, I want this person. They really sit down for like 2 weeks and battle it out in terms of the students that they want. So I've heard, I don't know if this is true. But, so it's really selective, but then again, I'm a firm believer, like if you really think this is for you, it's gonna work out. You know, if it's meant for you, it's gonna work out. So I wouldn't be intimidated by people who are gonna apply, because that's with anything, right? You're gonna apply to stuff, there's gonna be a whole lot of people there, right? Anyone else? Yes.
What's the duration of this program?
The duration of the program? You're required to stay at least 11 weeks. I was there for 12, but the cool thing about MHIRT is the grant says 12 weeks. You're only required to work 11, so if you want to take that last week and explore, you're technically, off the record, getting paid to enjoy your country. Does that make sense? So we traveled to Argentina and Peru for actual 2 weeks. So we stayed for 2 weeks and traveled. It was great.
Thank you. So our next panelist is Brian Smyser. He's at the School of Natural Resources, and School of Natural Resources and Environment, SNRE. And he was in Washington D.C. and he interned at the State Department.
Hi everybody, my name's Brian, like Michelle said. I'm also in the College of Urban Planning, so I'm a dual there. This is my second summer in the United States working on graduate school stuff. My experience is a little bit unique from everybody else in that my international internship happened in the United States, but it's internationally focused. And so I would say the brief gist of what I'll say is basically that thinking about international affairs and international work, a lot of that is focused in the United States, even if you're working in that sector. So thinking about internships abroad, that's in some respects different from an international internship, where it can be abroad, but it can also be in the United States working on international affairs. So I worked at the State Department, but before I kind of get in a little bit into my channels for getting involved with the State Department and also how I funded that, let me just mention, I really do think, not everything international is focused abroad. And so that is important to recognize. And coming off of that, a lot of stuff really is focused here and kind of coordinated out of the United States. So there's a lot of really great opportunities in the United States, whether you're interested in NGOs or government or whoever it might be, a lot of it is focused here. I would also recommend thinking ahead from a career step standpoint. I'm assuming most of you all are graduate students, and if you're graduate students, you really only have one summer that you're working with, and to prepare yourself to graduation and finding a job after graduation. And so building off of that, you want to use this in a way that you can leverage what you did that summer to help put you in a good position to get a job later on. And so I'll talk a little bit about government and why I think that's an effective means of leveraging. And basically the gist there is that people know government, people know the aspects that it deals with, and they know the type of work that you do. And there's smaller organizations which do wonderful work, but they don't have that degree of visibility that when you submit that on a resume for a company or a nonprofit or government, again, you're not necessarily in position where they have a sound understanding of who that organization was and what its mission is. So I think it's helpful from the government side. I don't think it's hurtful when you're working for a different organization, but it's something to consider as you're looking into this. I would absolutely echo all of their suggestions to consider submitting your applications early. So for the State Department, the deadlines are generally November 1st or the first week of November. And that is because they require security clearance, and that takes quite a while. So a lot goes into that, background checks and the sort of things like that. And lastly, I would say that you should all take advantage of your campus resources. So we've heard about great connections through School of Public Health, everything there. There's also really great connections to the government. Whether it's something like the State Department, but also in the natural resource field, which is my field. If you go to SNRE, there's a lot of people who have really distinct and really well-developed connections to whether it's the EPA or Department of Energy or whoever it might be. So I'll talk a little bit about what I did. So I worked for the State Department in their Bureau of Energy Resources, and basically their responsibility is managing American energy diplomacy. So it's a portion of their economic work where they develop partnerships between the United States and other countries that range from energy regulatory issues, trade of energy commodities, managing partnerships, also managing sanctions, like the sanctions in Iran are managed by the bureau that I worked under. My specific focus was generally on electricity issues in the Western Hemisphere, so I won't get too deep into that, but the first half of my summer was very much focused on the Mesoamerican region and energy issues in that region, and we were collaborating with all of the governments in that region to basically get them to a state where they could have kind of regulatory cohesion that would make electricity trade possible and enhance the resiliency of their systems and their ability to attract investment and enhance energy access in those countries. And then secondly, off of that, I was managing the US-Mexico bilateral energy relationship. And that deals with a lot of partnerships along the US-Mexico border, as well as a lot of changes that are taking place in Mexico right now with their energy sector. They've announced some major overhauls in the way that they handle state-owned hydrocarbons. And so that all has constitutional implications and things that interest American companies and the American government because they're a major trade partner with the US government. So that was the gist of my work. I was in Mexico City for about a week over the summer for some bilateral meetings there, but all my work otherwise was in Washington, D.C. But a good place to work and very international in focus, but not at all abroad. So something to consider. So for me, for supporting my summer, I had a Sussman Fund Fellowship, I guess it's called, from School of Natural Resources and Environment. And so basically every graduate program has some sort of funding. And if you're international, then sometimes the funding in your graduate program works for international stuff, sometimes it doesn't. I know for SNRE, if you're going to be abroad, it's a challenge to actually get their internal funding because most of that is geared towards work that's at least taking place in the United States. But then there's a lot coming out of the International Institute and the Education Abroad Office where they can help connect with other opportunities for funding abroad. So all good stuff to look into. But lastly, I would say, again, international doesn't have to take place abroad, and I think there are some advantages of working on international issues in the United States. While you might not get that exciting cultural component that 3 months in another country has, it does give you a good feel for what the actual working environment is, and from a career development standpoint, I think you develop a lot of connections that way, and you are working in a pretty, efficient, well-established infrastructure that's helping to facilitate all of this. So I think there's benefits for working both angles, but certainly working for the government worked out well. And if you're interested in working for the government, I'm happy to talk more about that. But I think lastly with the government stuff, if you do work for the government, having worked for the government in the past really does enable you to pursue government work in the future. So I'd previously worked for 2 government agencies, and I think that's led into very well. While it didn't lead into immediate connections with the group that I worked for this past summer, it does lead into understanding the thought process behind what they're looking for, what they do, and how they operate. And so having that experience, I think, leads into the future and kind of snowballs as you try to prepare yourself for potentially pursuing a career in the government or pursuing a career in the private sector or the nonprofit sector, but having that understanding of the way the government works is always pretty essential. So I recommend looking into that stuff, and applying early is definitely worth that looking at.
Does anyone have any questions for Brian? All right. So our next 2 panelists are 2 people that found their internships, so their perspective is going to be a little different. So our first panelist is Mirele Mann from the School of Public Health, and her internship was in Bolivia.
Buenas tardes, everyone. My name is Mirele, or Mel. That's okay. And so just a little background on myself. I went to U of M for undergrad and majored in international studies, specifically global environment and health. And I'm now in the School of Public Health studying environmental health science. So I don't know how many of you are in the School of Public Health, but in between your first and second year, you have to do a mandatory summer internship, and that can either be international or domestic, obviously. So how I found my internship in Bolivia, I'm part of like 5 or 6 listservs that cater to international jobs and careers and internships. So I got this email from what's called QUIC, the Quality Improvement for Complex Chronic Conditions organization, which is part of U of M, quite a mouthful. And so I saw that they were looking for people to go to Bolivia to work on this telehealth system for patients that have diabetes and hypertension, and I was like, that is perfect. So like everyone else here, I got on it early, and I applied. There was an application process, so an application I had to fill out, send in my resume. There was an interview with the project supervisor and his assistant, and then there was an interview over the phone with one of their collaborators to see your Spanish proficiency. So for an internship like this, where you're working directly with patients on a daily basis, it's pretty critical that you can speak Spanish well. Let's see what else. And during the application process, I constantly went to the Career Center, to my own advisors, to have them look over my resume and my application and stuff. You always want someone to double check what you're writing, if you're getting the message across, and make sure your resume is professional and all that stuff. So funding. This was a completely unfunded internship, so I needed to come up with about $5,000 for a 3-month project in Bolivia, and I had to do that all on my own. So this really taught me how to write grants. In the end, I got grants from the Individual Institute and the Tinker Field Research Grant, and the Global Public Health Initiative Fund. So the key for funding is to apply to many, many, many sources and apply for the full amount that you can get, because you can always give back money, say, oh, I don't need this much, but it's going to be harder to get all the money you need. So I ended up getting the full amount from all the grants, came out to about $6,000, and I was like, all right, I actually don't need $1,500 of this, you guys can take it back. So I really, really, really stress applying to lots of funds and asking for the full amount if you need it. As far as funding goes, I would say it's really important to be organized. They love seeing clear, concise grant writing. They like to see budgets that show exactly to the cent what you're going to use. So like, my flight was $1,600.30, and my food would be like $1,030 or something like that. Just be very concise. They'd like to be to see like you put a lot of thought into it, and it's a very organized essay, and answer questions just directly and clearly. Don't worry about prose and narrative and whatnot. So that was funding. Okay, so I guess what I did in Bolivia. I was in Bolivia for 3 months, and there were basically 3 parts to my project. The first month was dedicated to just working with our Bolivian collaborators. Dr. Pate, who was the research supervisor, continuously stressed working in 100% solidarity with our partners there. So again, really, really needed your Spanish, because I was going to hospitals and universities and clinics and government offices every single day, speaking with our collaborators there and trying to work out our project, which was the second part. So our project was that we were administering surveys in 4 different clinics throughout Bolivia and gathering basic demographical info and info on chronic conditions for our overall goal, which was the third part, enrolling diabetic and hypertensive patients in a telehealth program where once a week they would receive an automated phone call to check up on their condition. Like, did you take your medication this week? How are you feeling in comparison with last week? And just to see if we could help them and help the doctor-patient interaction with a cellular device, basically. And so tips in general, if you're going pretty much anywhere abroad, I would say the key is to be flexible, because not every country works as efficiently and as organized as the US. We had meetings that ran 2 hours late, didn't happen at all, people didn't show up, everything was delayed. I was supposed to work in a clinic, and it turned out that that clinic didn't want to be part of it, so the project was delayed because of that. And the point is just to keep an open mind and be flexible and patient and respectful at all times. Something else, definitely, like everyone said, look early, especially with funding, because once you get funding done, you got to think about vaccines, you got to think about buying your flight, you got to think about how you're going to prepare, both, I guess, mentally and physically for your trip abroad. There's a lot to do, so the best thing to do is get it done early. I was trying to pinpoint when exactly I had my internship confirmed, and I was looking at my emails, and by January I had already got the details down for funding and flights, so really early. And especially if you're going to do something public health related, medical related, in a foreign country, it's good to look at, let's say, medical terminology or something like that. Just educate yourself in some really necessary words that you're going to need, because I speak Spanish well, but I still didn't know what a stethoscope was in Spanish or anything like that. So that would be my advice to anyone. And if you have any questions. Yeah.
How do you figure out your content that you need for
Right, so this is where it came down to the budget. I just really had to think about every single thing I needed. Visa fees, flights, food, day-to-day transportation, transportation to and from the airport. Would I need printing pages to print the survey on? You need to think of everything that you could possibly need, because the point is to be 100% funded. You're doing this as like a job, basically, so you want to be, you don't want to be spending your own money on a job. So yeah, everything and anything you have to think of and just take that into account.
How did you go about finding housing if that was your responsibility?
Right, so actually it wasn't, luckily. Quick has a partner in Bolivia who works at a university who has experience with host families and matching up students coming in with families, so she took care of that.
Any other questions?
So you got a list from where you were going to work, everything that you would need in your job description. Like, how did you know exactly what to calculate into your funding?
Right. So I probably emailed my research supervisor a couple times a day, being like, all right, and what else, and what else? Because, I mean, they are relatively new in terms of this telehealth program in general is relatively new. So they had only done it, I think, 1 year before, Honduras or something like that. So I had to be like, what did they need? What should I include in my budget? Just being close communication. And yeah, the thing I'd suggest that I forgot to mention is while you're looking, the best thing to do is keep a spreadsheet and have organization name, website, application due date, and just update that an hour every day or something like that. Yeah.
Did you or anyone else, potentially public health or others, have to deal with regulatory issues in the country that you were working on besides IRB here? Your advisors usually take care of that.
My research supervisor took care of the IRB stuff, but there were a lot of things in country that we had to be pretty vigilant about. If you take anyone's picture, you got to have them sign a thing, write their name, all that jazz. And then there were other things too that were mostly in country, like you can't go into this hospital until you speak with the directors and sign this form and talk and then give them a protocol and explain your project and all this stuff. So that kind of stuff we had to take care of. In that sense, it was pretty independent.
Any other questions? Okay. So our final panelist is Gerardo Velazco del Angel. And he's from the school, the Ford School of Public Policy, and he's going to talk about his internship in Saudi Arabia.
Hi, thanks for the invitation. I was pretty much when I was trying to look for my internship, I was pretty much trying to get something that I really like. I'm doing a master in public policy, and I'm interested in energy regulation. So what I was trying to get, I was trying to look for this in the page of the Ford School, the recruiting page. This is the page for jobs through the Ford School. But I wasn't that successful in finding something that I really like. So what I did is I started to call former supervisors, and they asked me, well, what do you want? I mean, I can help you to pass your resume to persons that are focused on regulation, in energy regulation and telecommunication regulation, or even drugs regulation, but you need to be focused. So I answered him back that I really would like to focus on energy regulation. So he told me that he may send my resume to the International Energy Forum, that is an organization that tries to have dialogue between different energy agencies in order to regulate oil prices. So he sent my resume, and later on the IF contacted me, and they let me know that it wasn't gonna be easy to be there. But it's not impossible. But I need to be agree with some things regarding the culture, and that they are so conservative, and they warned me that there is no like the same social life that we have in Western countries. There is no cinemas, or there is no leisure activities. There is no bars in Saudi Arabia. So they wanted to be sure that I was aware of those kind of conservativeness issues. But I mean, I decided to apply, and I say, yeah, I mean, let's go ahead. Also, I really wanted to be like out of my comfort zone, so that was totally different to Mexico and United States. I mean, it's not a Western country, and also it's a Muslim country. So I decided to go ahead with the project, but then, I mean, the problem was the funding, because it's an NGO, and most of the NGOs don't have that much money to pay you and to bring you from another country and to keep you there or to get you a place for accommodation. So the second step was to look for funding. So I apply, as somebody here say that. Keep applying with all the funding that you can. So I did the same. Fortunately, I didn't get. I just got the full funding, and the same. I mean, they ask you about in what are you going to spend the money, and about food, about accommodation, about transport. I mean, at the beginning I was like, the funding is not going to be enough to go there. I mean, probably the funding is going to cover the food and the flight, but at the end, the IEF helped me to get accommodation and to get transportation, and that was the positive thing about this. So that's why I undertook the project. So I applied for this funding. That is, I mean, it's exclusive for students. So you guys want it, so I recommend to apply for MPP. But so that was the way that I got there. Most of my duties was regarding energy trends. I mean, it wasn't that much regulation, but I learned a lot of oil supply regarding oil and gas prices. And I was also working for an academic advisory board. I mean, for the NGO. I mean, the good thing about this NGO is that it's really small. I mean, they have like 20 people working there, so you can see several areas about an NGO. So that's the way that all this happened. So, if you guys have any questions? What?
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
How was the language barrier? Did you pick up Arabic or did you?
No, they speak English. Yeah, everything's in English.
So what city were you in?
Riyadh.
Oh, you were in Riyadh. That's probably.
Yeah, I was. I mean, the good thing about this is that the forum is placed inside of the diplomatic quarters. So that's the place where all the embassies are located. So I mean, everybody speaks English in that part, and it's more westernized in that part. I mean, but I wasn't living there, so every single day I was. I mean, they were driving me from one place to the other one.
Anyone else?
Sort of a general question. I guess when it comes to applying for internships and getting funding, do you guys have a lot of internships at first and then having a lot of money to do that process over and over again in terms of like budget? I don't know, like how, because if you don't get the funding, then you have to go to internship.
Yeah, that's what makes it tricky, because if you don't get the funding, you know, unless you want to pay for it on your own, you can't go. So what I did was I applied to lots of internships and picked the quick internship, and then just applied to a lot of funding and hope to God I got it. There was a guy in my group who applied to funding and didn't really get much at all, and I think in the end they managed to, my research supervisor helped him out, and he was like, all right, try this, try that, and he got some money. And there were definitely some people that had to dip into their own personal savings. But I mean, my recommendation is apply to as much funding as you can, go to grant writing workshops, talk to advisors and whatnot to get your grants looked over. Because if it's a great project that makes sense and you're really passionate about it and you write a great grant, then there really isn't a reason why you shouldn't get one.
Like, I mean, I don't know, we have resumes, it's not really to everybody, but like, is there like a more specific cover letter of what you want to do with that program? Is that more valuable?
All right, well, when I was applying to the internship itself, I mean, in the application they usually clarify, like, please include a cover letter or resume. Mine just wanted a summary of relevant experience and then your resume underneath it. But it varies by internship for sure.
I would also encourage you to attend the Funding for Internships and Research Abroad event that we're having next week on Wednesday, on October 2nd. There'll be some more information there in terms of finding sources of funding. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Also, so if we are in health, I'm in public health and I'm also looking to do the same thing. Plan my own internship because I kind of have an idea of what I want to do and then I want to follow with maybe some connections. But how early do you think you get firm and like know that you have something in place and what you'll be doing?
I would say there's not like a set date where you should know exactly what's up, but if you think about flights and all that kind of stuff, then you probably want to know by January. For international internships, that's when it's important to look early. I know a lot of people in my programs and stuff, they didn't start looking until after winter break, but because it's overseas, I'd say January, February, you should have it pretty cemented.
Because the way that public health specifically does it, the funding applications are due, like what, December? Like, you start to see people, do you have an internship yet? Like, so you won't be just out in the cold. And then it seems like funding apps are due like January or February, so you'll kind of have an idea of what you're working with way before like April. But there will be people who, it'll be like April, and you're like, hey, I'm going to Chile, and they're like, hey, I don't know yet.
Yeah, there definitely are. But yeah. I don't think, I was talking to someone in SPH, and they were like, there has never been a case where a student never got an internship. So worst comes to worst, you pick your favorite professor, and you're like, hey, can I just help out in your lab this summer? Like one of my friends did. So you'll always have someone. Yeah, they really help you out.
Can I make a note? Someone was asking about the budget. Sometimes your school has resources on what to include in your budget. Were you asking about? Yeah. I went to a seminar before I even knew about like whether I was doing MHIRT, because I was set on having an international internship and getting funding. And they had a whole seminar where they gave us a sample budget. They talked about what to consider, and I'm pretty sure if your school has international internships, they probably have someone or something to help you with that. Because they're not. I don't think you should have to be just by yourself. Like, okay, what you have no idea what to include, right? So just I guess seek that out within your school.
Right. There's always resources on campus. Yeah. And usually you'll find that when you're applying to grants and stuff, they have a pretty like set budget template. It's like, here include how much your flight costs, here housing, here food. So you're not gonna like blindly be like, all right, what else do I need?
I just have a question for the last two panelists. I just didn't hear, what were the names of the programs that you ended up doing your internship for?
Quick. QUICCC, Quality Improvement for Complex Chronic Conditions.
I applied to the International SNRE Forum. It has its headquarters in Riyadh.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you all for coming. I encourage you to take a look at the International Career Pathways flyer that you received in your packet. There's some really great panels coming up. I think that would be a good use. So thank you for coming.
I can go home to a clean house.